Well, hello everyone. This is Tara with Tara's Tuesday Talk, and I am just simply delighted that we have a guest today. This is Whitney Runyon. She is with the Archibald Project, and she is here with us to tackle one of those orphan myths we've been talking about. So before we get started with that, Whitney, will you just tell us a little bit about the Archibald Project?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Super thankful to be here and be able to share about the work we're doing. So the Archibald Project, we are an orphan care advocacy organization, and we use media to tell stories. And we use media to empower people to care for orphaned and vulnerable children. And so, yeah, we've done domestic work and international work, and we have a podcast, we have a YouTube channel, Instagram, website, really just any way for us to get our stories out there to help other people either get involved in caring for vulnerable children or stay involved in caring for vulnerable children.
That is amazing. And that's how I came to know about Whitney and them is through their podcast. So strongly
Oh,
suggest.
thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah.
Really inspiring stories. Get your mind going for what's going on with everybody else in orphan care and how to be a part of it. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the idea, sorry, just really fast, the idea of caring for vulnerable children is it can be so overwhelming and daunting. And so when you hear just one story, you're more likely to envision it for yourself. And that's what we saw when we started the Archibald Project is one family got involved from one story we told. And we were like, whoa, wait, we can actually tell more stories and get more children like in families. And so that's kind of how it just snowballed into now like our life's work. But yeah, stories are huge.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. And God wants to use our stories, and it's just a beautiful platform you have for sharing people's stories.
Thanks. Thank
So,
you.
yeah. So our audience knows that we've been jumping into this 100% participation campaign with Orphan Myth.
Yeah.
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 So the Archibald Project is one of the organizations that is a part of this.
Mm-hmm.
And so I invited Whitney today, guys, because we haven't really talked about that orphan myth number 2, which is there are no orphans in the U.S. And so I wanted Whitney to tackle this for us and help us kind of understand why this is a myth.
Yeah. So, I really think that we need to readdress the language we're using in general around vulnerable children because oftentimes the term orphan, it doesn't mean, like, if I say the word orphan, it might not mean the same thing to me as it means to the person who hears me say the word orphan. So technically an orphan is a person who has lost both parents to death. And then you can have a single orphan who has lost one parent to death, but still has one parent living. But really, when we're talking about this, in like majority of the people who say the term or say the word orphan really mean vulnerable child. And that just means they don't have a safe place to live, an adequate caregiver to stay consistent with them, um, you know, not living in extreme poverty, things like that. So for vulnerable children in America, we have over 400,000 kids in our foster care system. And I think there's about 100,000 children whose parents have been parents' rights have been terminated. And so there are literally around 100,000, a little bit more than 100,000 children right now in America who might have a living mom or dad, but their rights have been terminated. And so legally, they are quote unquote America's orphans, even though they're not actually, you know what I mean, like an orphan. They're a vulnerable child and they are needing permanency. They're needing to be adopted, really.
Right. That's very true. That's very good. And maybe tell us a little bit specifically of how the Archibald Project is working on tackling this myth and helping people understand truth.
Yeah, absolutely. So a few ways the Archibald Project's working with foster care in the States. One, we're just like trying to normalize it by making it less fearful. And yes, absolutely, children in foster care can have extreme trauma, and it can be a very hard path for a person to come in and walk alongside a child with extreme trauma. However, there are so many resources today. There are so many areas and that we can get help as caregivers. And so the Archibald Project wants to tell a story of foster care. So fostering teens, fostering sibling groups, fostering transracially, fostering any type of situation. And then we want to tell a story where it's not that like big, scary horror story that maybe the news likes to paint, or that so and so's child told us from school or whatnot. So we tell real stories of real people who are doing really beautiful things and the hard work in the domestic foster care world. And then it just helps, like I said earlier, it just helps people say, oh, oh, okay, well, could I do that? Like, is that something that I could possibly fathom doing in my life? And then we've started, which I'm really excited about, we've started now providing resources to people who have said, yeah, you know what? Okay, I listened to your podcast and I was inspired to foster teens. Now I need help because I have a teen in my home and I don't know what to do. And so now the Archibald Project is trying to provide resources of saying, hey, here's how you can help this child. Here's how you can help yourself while you're helping this child. Here's how you can help your marriage. Or if you're single, here's how you can build community, things like that, so that you're not in it alone and that you can keep going, because it is hard.
That's amazing, but it's doable, and that's really cool.
It is doable, yeah, but it's hard. And we were talking about our advisory board about this the other day, and we don't want to paint this like super sunshine and roses picture, but also we don't want to continue down this narrative of like, oh, it's too scary, we can't do it, it's too scary. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yes, 100%, 100%. It's a balance of understanding both sides, and the stories help that bring that out. And you're right when you said something about people only hear the crazy, this kid burned down this house, and they're really few and far between. And it's the real stories that, like you said, almost always we got a kid with trauma at different levels, but it's knowing how to handle them with the resources. And I think, when we started fostering, we started learning the trust-based relational interaction, all those things. And when I started seeing some of those practical to-dos for this kid with this behavior, here's your practical to-do. And I was like, oh, well, that's doable, right?
Yeah, I can do that. Yeah, totally. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can be proactive and do that. And I mean, the thing is, our bio kids, because we have adopted and bio and foster, and our bio kids have those things that I have to look for what's going to work so that we get through this issue and come out healthy. And so it's taking care of kids, and while the reaction may need to be different because of their trauma and helping them get through that, it's just figuring it out and sticking with it and all of those things. So I like that you said that, just for the awareness that there's a lot of good stories as well. And
there are so many good stories. And I think too, if people are thinking about fostering, our podcast, it's called Around the World with the Archibald Project. We've interviewed so many people who've actually aged out of foster care, and they share their story and kind of what they went through and how they really, their whole lives really were like yearning for family and permanent placement, and like having somebody that they could just know was going to be there for them. And they still want that, even if they've aged out. And so I think once you hear a person who's lived it, you're more likely to say, oh, they are just people. Like, they're just like me. They're just like my kids. Like, they just need somebody to love them and also to have help with trauma. But a lot of it is like needing a permanent place they know they're not going to be given up on. So yeah, check out that podcast, our podcast, if you're listening.
Please do, guys. Please do. It'll give you some really good insight to foster care and adoption, internationally and locally. So, stories tell it best, I think. So
totally.
That is great. All right, Whitney, I have one more question for you to wrap us up. So I think it's important, this Orphan Myth campaign of joining forces, bringing all these organizations together and their participants to be a voice at the same time. Tell me kind of your perspective on that.
I think maybe you cut out. What was your question?
Oh, sorry. No. So what's your perspective? Just share with us why you think it's important, this orphan myth, all of us coming together.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it's important for quite a few reasons. I think it's important, number one, because the more people talking about a subject, I think the more people's attention we're going to get, because we're all out there in our own spheres talking and trying to say, same thing, maybe with different words. but we're all trying to say, hey, children deserve families. Children need families. Children, like, the best place for a child is a safe family. And now you bring us all together. And so it's like throwing one rock in a pond, and then another rock over here in the pond, another rock over here, and they're all doing their own little things. But then you throw a massive boulder into a pond, and you have this massive tidal wave, really, that goes to shore. It's kind of like that. It's like you're grouping all these people who have the same mission and the same heart for children. And I believe we can be a bigger voice when we all come together. So that's like one of the main reasons I think it's really important. I also think it's really important too, because sometimes this is it can get really lonely and you feel like you're the only ones. So getting to actually meet people like you guys and learn about what other people are doing, and then realizing you're not alone, there's so many other people out there doing it. And then, I mean, selfishly for the Archibald Project, our whole mission is telling stories. And so now I'm like, oh, we could tell that organization's story. We could tell that organization's story. So it's kind of cool for just kind of a networking way too.
Right.
But
agreed. Yeah. I think it's really neat that they brought us together, and it is much nicer to be doing it as a team and together than trying to be loud on your own. So
yeah, absolutely.
Definitely refreshing. So, well, thank you, Whitney, for your time with us, and just
thank you.
Encouraging us through your work. Pray blessings on your work, and just
thank you.
Encourage everyone to go listen to the Archibald Project podcast. Find them on YouTube, wherever you like to visit organizations. That's where they are. Probably Instagram as well, I imagine.
Yeah, we're all over. Just the Archibald Project. Anywhere you want to go, just type in the Archibald Project.
Go listen. And then we encourage everyone, all the listeners as well, get on orphanmyth.org and sign up to be a participant. We've got the end of March through the beginning of April to, just raise our voices, share about the orphan myths, and get people to participate. So that's our goal, just to be a voice together. So
yeah.
Thank you, Whitney, so much.
Thanks, guys.